Record while I'm at it.
All right. So
we can upload this later if we choose.
All right. So this is the latest and greatest, of course, and that was has to do with matrix and agents and egos and markets and all that jazz. It ties a lot into the other diagram we've had that.
The affect stuff?
No, affect is part of it. Let me just pull the other one up. So just discussing this one. Ah, there we are. It's just ginormous.
The big one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've taken, meta-narrative seems to be the focus here, and you're showing an obfuscated meta-narrative, that which has been...
So this line decay into system, right? Into the abstract phase space, into these fragments, right? And so in this diagram, that's the meta-narrative obfuscated. This is the fragments.
Right.
The fragments themselves, the artifacts remaining, are actually sound bites. The sound bites are the reflection of the market machine, which is the form of the abstract phase space. So instead of taking all of the different archetypes unified as the whole structure of it, which is really, really complex, we're just reduced to like the machine archetype overlaying everything, a very simplistic system of like this, then this.
Right.
Like
yeah, so market machine, basically this is an interface to commodity, the commodification of life, that process.
Yeah, it's essentially, in this case, it would be where the number system interferes with the thinking. Everything is reduced to its categories. Because it's reduced to its category, right. It has no longer any kind of uniqueness.
Yeah, so there's a positive feedback loop of the APS onto itself instead of going through this whole self-aware loop.
Right, right. So this is kind of where this is how it's working itself out.
Cool.
Hopefully.
Yep. And then we have this whole ego matrix type system.
Right. So it's not very clear just with the arrows, but like if you take a collection of sound bites, right? And you process ego is more like a universal thing. It's like a universal mechanism, if you will. It basically takes a bunch of these sound bites and groups them together into an I, right? And so it does this across the entire network in various locations. So it gets these nodes, and these nodes become these agents that I was talking about.
Right. So it's sort of like this, the problem of the numbers system being applied to the body as a collection.
Yeah, in arbitrarily ways. And so you get these narratives applied to these agents, and so then you have, of course, the neural operating system executing the code these agents based on these egos or ego. But the problem is that the agents are blind to the fact that it's the same ego, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it looks like they're competing one against the other, but it's actually just the same mechanism in place in both.
And so each agent here is sort of along the lines of a specific commodification channel, you could say, where you have relationships.
An instance of these sound bites coming together as a unit, right?
Right. Well, so I'm just wondering, why do we have multiple agents, if not for different channels of commodification?
Today, this minute I'm this agent, the next minute I'm that agent, right? Like the neural operating system is hijacked for this process to produce the.
And also in one context, you can be an agent and flip to another because you're doing something else.
Yeah, exactly. So again, be right back. I'm still cooking. Just give me a moment. Cooking chicken is almost this fun balance of burning the bird or killing yourself with food poisoning. So,
yep, don't want to do that.
Don't want to do either.
No.
Right. So the market basically is expressed as these sound bites because of the obfuscation of the actual meta narrative behind all of how its inner workings, right? Obfuscation simply here means you can't see the model making it all happen.
Right.
And so you got the simplistic number-based categorization system where you just trade. The sound bites are just its representations. So one sound bite is progress, right? Like the myth of progress. The sound bite is growth, really. So market growth being that.
Well, there's sound bites on so many different levels. Like as you say here, that would be a mythical sound bite. There could also be a sound bite like I need 2 boxes of rice or whatever.
Yeah. I'm using soundbite as an abstraction for a narrative that is so small and so like a 5-year-old could do it kind of deal, you know, which goes into another layer of why only 5-year-olds exist in the system.
Kind of, yeah. That's a simplification, obviously.
I obviously, yes, generalization, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's not meant as an insult. I mean,
yeah, because I mean, with the most complex like corporate mergers, you're still it's soundbite versus soundbite, right?
Yeah, and really, it's all about like the emotional, response. So, what's the difference between that and a child? To be honest, and we're all affected. It's not like we're above that thing. It's just a realization that this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the sound bites then are like these primordial myths, if you will. It's an abstraction over that. And it's a reflection of the market itself. So growth being the exponential growth of the market because it just consumes everything in its path. So that's then reverberated back into the progress story.
Right.
Basically, this is where we make the connection between us and the 33 myths of the system. This would be like the sound bites here. The myth of the economy, the myth of gender, myth of, like all of these different sound bites coming out. For instance, the gender myth that we were just talking about that earlier in terms of husband and wife, how he leaves the husband leaves her for a tramp, she gets the blame. Despite the fact that the relationship is reflective of she's supposed to have all those choices and blah, 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 right? Like, remember that little myth we were discussing earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like in relationship to that, like the man versus woman. Like they become like these simplified sound bites that are reflective of the system, of the market crushing, for instance, the model to begin with.
Right. Yeah. It's the stories that go through our heads to justify all kinds of different things.
Yeah, and we take it as normal. Oh yeah, this is the
right.
This is how men behave. This is how women behave. Blah, blah, blah.
And that's sort of that positive reinforcement loop as well. You're not sitting there and thinking hard about it or reflecting and saying, "Oh, this is the way it should be." You're sort of just taking up a something that somebody else has said that you've heard or whatever.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's exactly a part of it. And so this is where you get that whole soundbite transforms to myth. at the bottom there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. So the way to look at this diagram really is that abstract phase space as market machine is putting an arrow into every single sound bite you're seeing, right? Not just the first one. I tried to do that, but it got so messy. I didn't want to bother.
So there's a market of ideas, you could say, and when something becomes sound bitefied, it's pulling out some type of archetype out of the APS and transmitting that.
Right. So the fragmentation that happens to the system, the decay that's normal and the positive in general, is now hijacked into this sound bite sort of circle jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Then these, as I was saying before, you take all of the sound bites together and their coalescence, right? In any one instance, they like forget about where it's happening for a second, but just the fact that it's happening, like a coalescence, that mechanism itself, that's where we have ego. That the taking of this soundbite plus that sound plus this soundbite plus that soundbite, right, and twisting it through a conceited to the conceit mechanism, right? Because this is all involving the affect diagram and everything like that.
Right.
Now, do this.
Isn't it possible to put meta narratives together without conceit, or to put narratives together, sound bites?
Just a sec. Give me a sec.
Yeah. So we're talking about hypernarratives, basically?
Meta-narratives. Hypernarrative is, it's kind of like a crossword puzzle of a bunch of them crisscrossing each other. A meta-narrative would be like taking a whole bunch of hypernarratives and just squishing them together, whether they fit or not. And if they don't fit, you get this obfuscation going on.
Right.
And the fragment and the market machine works in this case because it is able to just apply numbers to this obfuscated scenario and just like cut out whatever it wants in terms of commodities and just classify this or that or the other as whatever it wants. But in the process, the body, the organism, the shelter, and all of that gets traded as part of the whole mix, on top of a whole bunch of other garbage. So.
Yep.
So that's kind of where all of this is tied together.
Gotcha.
So all of these coalescences via ego.
Right. Yeah, we were just getting into that. So why do you say via ego?
So ego is the mechanism of coalescence itself. So when you have these sound bites coming together as a unit, right? That mechanism is ego.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, yeah. No.
So it doesn't belong to anybody.
Right. So I think I was thinking about conceit itself or something.
Conceit is another mechanism that's part of the entire flow, right? It's the counterpart to altruism, which can itself be conceited.
Right. Yeah. So I guess we're cleared up there. Ego just being this focal point of.
Gotta tend to my potatoes.
Something like that, yeah.
Just give me a second. You want to know what I saw in there? All right, so just before I gotta log off for a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, fine.
Because it's gonna be dinner time for us.
Yeah, you want to pick up after though, or?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I really do. But before I go, I'd just like to wrap up the little bubbles.
Yeah.
So now that we've got tackled what ego is, coming from where it's originated, conceit is very much related into that, because it's like the narrative aspect of the conceited mechanism. So once you have an attachment happening, the attachment is to a narrative, and the component of the narrative that ties in all the sound bites together is ego, right? And the ego is now projecting this agent.
Right.
Part
yeah,
of the
we mean that pretty simply, as in you can step back and say, okay, what actually ties these things together? Well, you could say it's a body, but it's actually a body, a mind, whatever. And that's the kind of central point. What is your ultimate context? That's what we're saying when we point to ego. It's this body moving through space and time.
The realization of conceit as I, right? When I and me and all of that happens, not only in the sympathetic, empathetic calculation, but as an actual fabricated object.
Yeah. So the sympathetic and empathetic, that is said to be a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, it's just the calculation of like, okay, this archetype is part of, not part of the structure.
Right. Like a natural thing, like you feel pain and you move your body differently in space to deal with that.
Right. So that's that. And then we get to these agents, which an ego produces any number of agents. So the phenomena itself keeps happening and happening and happening. And this is why I was saying, like, nobody owns an ego. It's more like a universal thing that happens to people. Or that happens in the system. And so each time it happens, you get an agent, right? That's the relationship there. So a person could represent many agents, actually, which is where you get like the conflicting internal conflict and all of these weird situations like that.
Right.
And then the entire agent / mythology / that's brought together, right? So the sound bites transformed into a larger, more meta-narrative like myth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The same sort of pattern is happening there, where the hyper narrative or whatever. So we get these myths, which is like your myth of progress, myth of gender, myth of, like all of these 33 myths. I don't know how many for us. I think we'd have a different classification for it. Pretty sure we would. I'm thinking either 4 or 12 as usual. But
of course. Yeah, that'd be neat to kind of pull out archetypal myths. And that's also along the lines of, I guess you could say, I was just thinking like each of these agents rely on a cosmos or whatever, supplied by the sound bite to operate within a system. So operating an ego within a system.
Right. This is what the matrix is supplying right there. This is sort of like all ties in together.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the general idea behind this diagram. This is the next step from this would be like to just attach this to pleasure and pain. Then you get attach it to narrative. Then you get your sound bites. Then you get your egos. Then you get, like, all of these things are working together in tandem.
Cool. Yep.
All right. We'll end here for now and then continue after dinner.
Yeah, sounds good. Just hit me a message and we'll go from there.
Cool.
All right, I'll stop. Yeah.